Good evening. Welcome to We Mean Business. I'm Anisha Nayyar-Dhawan. The cap of 65,000 US H-1B visas was hit in the very first few days of April. Now a lottery system will be used to pick the successful candidates. The last time a lottery system was used was in 2008 when the cap was exhausted in a matter of days. What does this mean for Indian technology firms who are big recipients of H-1B visas? To discuss this, I am joined by NASSCOM President Som Mittal. We have with us Mr. Siddharth Pai, President Asia Pacific Region Information Services Group, who's joining us from Bangalore. We've got Nishchal Khorana, Head Consulting ICT Practice, Frost Sullivan, South Asia and Middle East, and we'll also be joined by Chowdhry, Managing Director, Equity Research, Global Equities Research, who will be joining us from San Francisco. Welcome to We Mean Business, gentlemen. Mr. Mittal, let me start with you. The H-1B visa cap has been reached in just 5 days. Does this mean trouble for Indian IT companies?
Well, for us, it's important that we have flexibility to move resources up and down, right? While large part of the work happens in India, we do need people to go across and work. But, we are not surprised of what has happened. We actually anticipated it. The industry anticipated this. As you know, that last year, this cap had been reached in June or July timeframe, and hence there was this backlog that would be there. So I think the industry had anticipated that we would reach this, and I'm sure they have adequately planned for resources even in the applications that they have made right now. As you would appreciate, for this model is used not only by Indian IT companies, the same model is used by other multinationals who have large centers in India, where they also have to necessarily send some people there. So I suppose as compared to the period 2008 to 11, where the visa caps were hit only in, say, January or February timeframe, last year I think we already had a signal that this would be reached. So I think people have factored this in their resource planning now.
Right. Mr. Khorana, does this mean that Indian companies have preemptively applied for more visas than they have planned to send employees because they are afraid that in the lottery system it's all very uncertain? So let's apply for more than what we are envisaging to send.
The most interesting part, and I think something which should give us some confidence, is obviously the fact that the entire cap was met within a week's standpoint shows that there is again confidence within the IT companies that we're going to probably have the right kind of business again, the kind of growth that we've been looking at, right? We saw a steady decline over the last few years, and then we see again a surge, which is a clear signal that there's a sales funnel, there's a signal that there's a lot of confidence, a signal that yes, we're on the right track. Keeping that in mind, of course, I'm sure the larger companies do keep a buffer and a bench, keeping their sales funnel in mind. So I'm sure they've kept a buffer. I think what happens in the lottery system is it's probably the mid companies and the small companies who do not keep so much of a buffer for themselves, who probably struggle a little more because they will now have to go through the lottery system, and they would have probably going to struggle a little bit in terms of the proportion that they have with the large companies to find the right portion of the H-1B visas which they will need for the coming year.
Right. Mr. Siddharth Pai, will this then impact the ability of Indian IT companies to take on more work? Because we are seeing signal that the US economy is improving. Perhaps US companies will outsource more. Will this then affect Indian companies' ability to take on more work?
Anisha, as Mr. Mittal said at the beginning of this conversation, I think moving people back and forth is an integral part of this business. So whether we like it or not, we're going to have to deal with whatever gates there may be from a visa processing perspective to get people back and forth to the US. That said, I think there are a couple of things that are extremely positive. One, of course, the fact that the number of visas has been raised fairly significantly, which I think is actually a good move on the part of the US government, recognizing that, in fact, there's more work to be had coming out of the US, and therefore the need to make such visas available, not just for Indian IT companies, but for anybody who has an operation in India. And number two, as Nishchal pointed out earlier, I think one can already read into the fact that the visa cap has been reached pretty early, which must mean that a bunch of IT companies, whether Indian or not, are actually extremely confident about what their pipeline looks like for this year from the US. So on both counts, I think it's actually positive. The fact that there is a little bit of a crimp in moving people back and forth is something we've always had. It's not going to go away, but I think it's actually loosened up a little bit, which is a positive sign.
But the cap still 65,000 only, Mr. Mittal, and if the US economy expands quite a bit and the business really increases, and you do not have enough H-1B visas to send your employees there to your on-site client unit workplaces, what will you do then? How will you deal with this in the short term?
Yeah, so, I think, as you said, there are two issues to this problem. One is, what do we do in the short term, and what's the long-term solution? I think the fact, and by the way, this is two kinds of visa caps. One is a 65,000, which is where most of the Indian companies apply, and then there is a 20,000 cap, which is actually for graduates out of US universities, and both these caps have been used. So this 85,000 kitty, if you may call it, is used by US companies, non-IT as well as IT companies, and I think it just shows the huge shortage that's there for people with STEM degrees, which is science, technology, engineering, maths. And I think this is also an indication to the US authorities that their own model of putting artificially quotas, etc., which is actually not followed anywhere else in the world,